presentation, which I will share in a moment. But let me just go around and ask people to introduce themselves. So I think I see Evan Saji. Can you just talk a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I go to St. Ambrose College. I'm doing my A levels right now, and I'm in year 12.
Excellent. And is it your wish to go into medicine?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And any other thoughts on what specific branch, or why would you want to do medicine?
I would like to be a surgeon.
Oh, I see. Okay. Why?
I just like helping people, and it'd be cool to just help people every day as part of my job.
Okay. Excellent. And then moving on to, is it Evie Singer?
Hi, my name's Evie. I am at the University of Birmingham studying biomedical science, and I want to do medicine after my degree in graduate entry medicine, and hopefully be a GP. I like the idea of having something different every day and getting to see a wide variety of patients.
Excellent. Fine. And Chelsea Trainer?
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I go to the University of Salford. I'm studying psychology, and I hope to go into like neuropsychology and brain injury rehabilitation.
Okay, very good, fine. And then we have Rayhan.
Yeah, hi. I go to Altrincham Grammar School for Boys. I'm in the final year 6 form there, and I have a great passion for medicine, and I'd like to study in the future, hopefully.
Okay. And Hamza Qureshi?
Hi, my name is Hamza, and I go to Oldham Sixth Form College, and I would like to study medicine in the future.
Okay, and we have Saji Bibida, who I know is our specialist. Can you just say hi, Bibida?
Hi everyone, I'm Bibida, one of the specialists working in NF clinic.
Fine. So Bibida and I work together at the neurofibromatosis clinic in Manchester. Fine. Okay, so it's great to hear from all of you. Let me just see if I can share my PowerPoint. So often there is a bit of a delay, so bear with me. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, fine, right. So, right, okay, so I will move on to my first slide. So, why I became a brain surgeon? So when I was about 13 years old, actually, I was reading a lot of books on neuroscience and the brain in particular, and I was fascinated by some concepts, particularly the brain is how you perceive the world. Every input is fed into the brain. I was reading a couple of books which seem to suggest in the future that people will be having their brains in a fish tank connected to various devices, and that seemed like a pretty cool thing at that time. And again, there are a few unique things about the brain, as you know. So you can move your heart, have it transplanted, but you still be yourself. And you could have any other organ transplanted and you'd still be yourself, but not the brain. So I've always been fascinated by the brain. So I didn't particularly want to be a doctor, just a brain surgeon, to be honest. And another thing is, I thought I looked quite nice in blue. That was an added motivation, I have to say. So I was born in Kerala, in India, which is on the southwest corner. Lovely place. On one side you have the Indian Ocean, and on the other side you have huge mountain ranges, so the climate is generally pretty good. So I went to medical school in a government medical school called Mahatma Gandhi University. A fairly large medical school, but India, as you know, is a developing country, not many facilities, but we had excellent teachers who instilled on us the importance of clinical acumen. So we're not that reliant on tests and scans, but you had to diagnose things by clinical examination and history taking. So that was pretty good. We had lots of teachers who were trained in the UK, and so that seemed a good place to go to train. But it's a place where I realized that, you know, you meet a lot of poor patients because it was a government medical school. And you realize that poverty in material wealth has a huge correlation with poverty in health, body and soul. So when I came to the UK, my first posting, the first place I got jobs, and in fact it was very difficult to get into medicine at that point. My first job was in Belfast. Didn't really have much idea as to where Belfast was or what was happening there. And the first few days I thought it looked like a really nice place, lots of lovely murals painted on walls. But then after a few days I started noticing actually there was this civil war which was going on at that time. And though as a foreigner I wasn't really experiencing anything on the streets, in the hospital you could see the aftermath of it. And a few weeks after I started working in the hospital, we had this Alma bombing. So most of you would not have heard about it, but it's one of the worst atrocities in Belfast, or in Northern Ireland. So we had lots of patients who were airlifted into my ward, and that's the first time I was seeing patients with kind of bomb blast injuries. And bomb blast injuries are very particular because you see the flesh is split from inside out, and then there is this horrible smell of I suppose chemicals, as well as, because this was very close to a car, there's the smell of motor oil on each of the patients. And even to this day, that if I'm sitting in traffic and I smell diesel or oil, I immediately start thinking about this bombing. So it was a big shock to the system in your first days of clinical practice to be faced with this. But again, I understood a lot about how the health service is set up and how different patients go where, and how the ambulance service works, and how teamwork is essential. So that was an interesting experience. And Belfast at that time, you know, peace was coming into Belfast, and so the paramilitaries had stopped killing people, but a new thing started called punishment beatings. I don't know if any of you are from Belfast, but have had experience of that. So there were these people, and this photo might seem very normal at current times with COVID, people self-isolating, but in those times that was not the intention. There were essentially a lot of people walking around trying to harm people actively, and their intention was not to kill people but to maim them. And it was very strange to me as a doctor that many of these people seem to have a huge understanding of medicine and anatomy. So one of the favorite things there was this thing called kneecapping. So you soon came to realize who was kneecapped by an amateur and a professional. So an amateur would shoot from the side of the kneecap to splinter the kneecap, but actually that person would be able to walk in a few months, so you can easily walk without a kneecap. It's not particularly essential for walking. Whereas the professional would make the person lie down and shoot through the back of the knee to take out the artery, and so then that person would end up with an amputation. Similarly, in the ankle, an amateur would shoot through the side to take away what we call the malleoli, you know, the bulky bony bits on the side of your ankle. But again, that's something which can be repaired, whereas the professionals would shoot through one of the key bones in the leg called the talus, and again, that's a very difficult injury to repair. So there were people who actually paid a lot of attention and thought into harming people, so they were not just interested in simply injuring people, but they would often think about how would those injuries be repaired. So they really paid a lot of attention to this. And I remember actually even seeing a patient who was dumped in A&E in a car, and he was hemorrhaging from everywhere. And we wanted to test his blood to see what blood we needed to give him, and we found 3 or 4 different blood types. So what we think happened is that this guy was tortured, he was beaten up severely, and they wanted to keep him alive to torture him more, so they actually gave him blood transfusions. So that was the kind of things which were going on in that day. So it was a horrible place to be, but as a trainee interested in trauma, that was a great experience, because you got the whole gamut of injuries. They even, I think, tried to publish a paper on a series of patients who were shot in A&E. So, you know, some people would be shot and then they wouldn't necessarily die, so they'd be brought into the hospital, and then the doctors and nurses would try and save their lives, and then the paramilitary guys would actually come in to walk in the hospital and then find them and try and kill them again. So it was an interesting place. But after rotating through different specialties, trauma, orthopedics, cardiac surgery, eventually I arrived in neurosurgery. And that was a very important point, because, you know, I'd spent many years thinking I want to be a neurosurgeon, and finally we've arrived in neurosurgery. And the thing then is, you don't really know whether you actually will actually enjoy it. And this is a big problem in medicine, which is, if you've made up your mind that you want to be a physician, a cardiologist, a gastroenterologist, or say a neurosurgeon, you have to go through many years of training to reach that stage. And with a lot of effort and a lot of luck, you might actually make it, but then you might find you don't enjoy it, and then it's wasted whole career. So one of my first on-calls was when a 16-year-old was brought in. He had been on a night out with his friends, got into an argument, somebody took offense, and they waited for him to walk home, and then they beat him up quite badly with the hammer. And so this is a brain CT scan with, there's a fracture there, and there's a big clot here. This lens-shaped clot is typical of what we call an extradural hemorrhage. Now, what's particular about this is it's a nasty injury, and if you don't take that clot out quickly, then the person will die in a very short period of time. The brain is very dependent on oxygenated blood, and if it doesn't get oxygenated blood after 5 minutes, then it starts malfunctioning, and after a few more minutes, then bits of brain start dying. So if there's a big clot inside the head, then the pressure inside increases, and so the blood pressure is not enough to pump oxygenated blood into the head. So there is no point in trying to resuscitate this patient. You really need to remove this clot out. So when the patient came in, it's immediately clear that we just had a few minutes to save his life. And lots of people were looking at me to do the next step in terms of getting him into a scanner and operating on him. And though I had seniors helping me, I did have a significant role to play in his operation, and the boy survived and survived well. And that whole experience was made it clear to me, actually, I had chosen the right profession, because yes, I was worried, but I was not stressed out. It's pretty calm. I hate to say this, but I actually enjoyed helping and doing the operation, and it was a very rewarding experience to see that patient actually walk out of hospital after a few weeks. But that is not necessarily universal. There are some people who would actually be put off by that whole experience. And so to an extent, you need to try and understand the things that you like and the things that you don't like. And when you're choosing a specialty, there's no right or wrong here. You really need to go for something which you enjoy. And remember, when you're young, you'll probably enjoy most things. But to come to the peak of your career, particularly in surgery, you'll be in your late 40s or 50s, and you need to ask yourself, will you enjoy it at that point? So I think this is one of the hardest things of going into medicine, which is to actually try and know yourself and know what you like and you don't like. So after my stint in Belfast, I went to London to do a research degree in spinal cord injury. And this involved experiments on rats, so very cute things. So before this, I used to think that mice and rats were pretty much the same thing, but I realized that rats are actually very intelligent animals. So if you pick up a rat, they don't necessarily bite you straight away. They are actually quite inquisitive. They will sniff you out, explore. Whereas a mouse is a mindless creature. You pick up a mouse, its first instinct is to bite you and run away. So rats are very intelligent creatures, and it was a pleasure to work with them. Didn't particularly enjoy the experiments on them, but I understood how necessary it was. And it gave me a great insight into how science works. And one of the things is that you understand that science involves a lot, there is a lot of art to it. It's not just pure maths and facts. You begin to understand how to read papers and evaluate evidence. So that was a very useful experience. And I think for the modern physician or surgeon, it's very important to be aware of how science works, because you're bombarded with information from papers, and you need to understand how that bit of information has been arrived at. So I think having a basic science background is very helpful. I just want to check that you can all hear me still. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yep. Fine. Okay. So while I was in London, we again had another horrible bombing, the London bombings. There were quite a lot of people were killed. And the hospital that I was training in, the Royal London, was the main trauma hospital. So again, was faced with the familiar situation of people with their tissues split open. This was a better organized response compared to Belfast, I have to say, because they had learned from Belfast. The emergency response service was much better, very smooth. So I think in our hospital, we treated about 250 patients. The bomb blast went off around 9 a.m. And by lunchtime, the entire casualty was empty. They was just so efficient, and there were so many people who were very calmly going about their business. There were secretaries who were acting as runners because the phones were quite busy. There were psychologists to help patients, but also staff. I remember when I was in casualty, there was a lady next to me scribbling furiously on a notepad. And I looked to see what she was writing. I assumed she was a medic of some sort, but she was actually planning the menu for staff. And that was her job, because, you know, that was just an example of how meticulously planned response was, because they had assumed that if there was a major terrorist incident, a lot of staff would need to be staying in hospital and somebody would need to feed them. So barely 2 hours after the bomb blast, there was a lady who was actually planning the menu for that evening. So it was just an example of meticulous planning, and also highlighted the importance of other people who you may not necessarily be thinking of as important to the emergency response. For example, that lady was there to take care of people who were frontline workers. After my stint in London, then I did my formal neurosurgical higher specialist training in Birmingham. So that's where you learn all the intricate operations, brain tumors, taking out, dealing with aneurysms and vascular malformations, spine conditions, and so forth. So that was a very busy unit, again, in a lovely city. And then I had a small stint in Germany, in St. Augustine, where I attained the fellowship of the European Board of Neurological Surgery. After that, I thought I would subspecialize in the field of neurosurgery. And spine surgery seemed fairly interesting to me. So while I was doing my neurosurgical training, I was actually, I had like a property development business on the side, and I found that actually I like doing things with my hands, fixing cupboards and things like that. And I thought this might serve me well in the field of spine surgery. So I did a fellowship in Toronto. Again, a very busy unit. Toronto was fairly unique in that it covered a very large catchment area, and they were very big into winter sports. So we used to have lots of people who would have injuries while snowboarding or from snow bikes. So that again was a great experience. And then I got a consultant job in Salford Royal, where I'm currently working. So I've been here for about 7-8 years now. So on a daily basis, my main subspecialty is dealing with complex spine problems. But when I'm on call, I deal with head trauma, bleeds into the brain, and so forth. I'm a lecturer in Salford University. So I teach on an MSc course there. I'm the clinical lead for neurosurgery. This is a very large unit. We have nearly 28 neurosurgeons, one of the largest units in the country. And so part of my job involves like a managerial position. And then I'm also the specialist spine surgeon for the National Complex Neurofibromatosis Type 1 Center in Manchester. So we see a lot of very rare, interesting things, things which you've not really studied or learned about because they are so rare, you then have to operate on. This was an operation I've just done this week, a very large cyst inside the chest. So even though I'm a spine surgeon, occasionally I have to open the chest to deal with problems rising from the spine. Rare case, only one reported in the world before. So we're privileged to be in a center where we have a lot of rare pathology, which we then have an opportunity to deal with and help and learn from. So in short, like I said, for being a surgeon, one of the things I just realized this week is that one of the attributes necessary is you need to have a strong bladder for this. For example, this operation took nearly 12 hours, so you need to have the ability to work and stand there for long without taking a break. In terms of qualities needed to be a good doctor and surgeon, I feel one of the key things is teamwork. And this is particularly important if you are a specialist. So when I moved into the house live in, a lot of my neighbors were very excited and happy. They said, "Oh, we've got a doctor next to us who can help us." And I explained to them, "Look, I'm the least useful doctor because for me to do anything, I need at least 10 or 12 people. On my own, I am literally useless." If you are a GP or an anaesthetist in some specialties, yes, there are more things you can do. But nevertheless, teamwork is key. And the other thing I think which is important is you need to have a very calm temperament. So you need to organize yourself, and you know, the health service in general, no matter which system or which country you work in, there will be chaos around you, and you need to have the ability to calm yourself and continue to work. And even though you may not be able to do everything that you want to do, you still need to be able to do the important things and not worry too much about the things you couldn't complete. And I think in general, as a doctor, you owe it to your patients to strive to better yourself. So every day you come in, you're not just coming to work in a bank or a chip shop. So you want to better yourself so that you can provide a better service for your patient. In general, I would say career in medicine is very rewarding. For that matter, even if you're a porter working in a hospital, when you go home, you have the satisfaction that you've helped people. So I think I'm glad that all of you guys are thinking of a career in medicine. I'm sure if you want something bad enough, you will get it, and it will prove to be very rewarding. With COVID, there have been a few challenges. The whole country is suffering. The health service in particular is under a lot of strain. It has had a huge impact on surgery. We've not been able to perform a lot of operations because the resources have been diverted elsewhere. The turnover of patients is very slow. We've had to social distance patients. There's a lot of time spent in cleaning, so you know, it's going to take us years to catch up on the backlog. I would say, even if you're not a medic, as someone interested in a medical career, I think you folks have a huge role in educating others. For that, you need to understand the science. There's a lot out there, particularly a lot of the journals are now free to the general public. Try and understand the science, and I think you have a huge role in educating yourself and others around you. We're hoping to have a virtual work experience program. As you know, because of the risk of infection, it is difficult to invite you guys into the hospital for two reasons. One is you might bring infection into patients who are very vulnerable, and the other thing is you could catch COVID from the hospital. So sadly, at this stage, we're limited in the face-to-face contacts which we used to offer to students. But we want to see whether we can do some things in a virtual manner. So we, in Salford Royal particularly, we're lucky that we have access to some video consultation programs. So you could partake in 2-3 clinics, multidisciplinary meetings. There are patient group meetings where I think it will be helpful for you to meet patients and talk to them about their journey through the hospital. There are some ward visits you could do virtually. So I myself, sometimes, even if I'm in the hospital, I have a couple of patients at the moment. They are very sick and they are COVID positive. So for me to go into the room they are in, I will need to spend 10-15 minutes donning, and then it's a huge strain on other people around me as well. So one of the things I've done is I've been able to speak to them on their phone via video, and these are things that you could perhaps partake in. We still have a few teaching webinars where again you could partake in and have a feel for what the students and junior doctors are taught, and also understands the questions and answers, which the webinars will give you an insight into. And then I think you could have some input into some of the projects which are going on. One of the key things I think, and I'm sure Gareth will stress this as well, is that if you are partaking in this, it's very important to respect patient confidentiality. And if you're having one of this virtual experience, I think it would be good to have a few minutes to talk into the nitty-gritty of what's expected. So that's pretty much my presentation. That was just a brief overview. I didn't want to spend a lot of time just talking about myself, but I'm here to answer any questions you have, or if you feel that you would like to hear about something else, I'm very happy to do so. Go ahead. Gareth, first of all, is there anything else you would like me to cover?
No, that's been very informative, Mr. Joshi, and I'm impressed. I don't know anything about your background apart from your hosting work experience, so it's been a fascinating insight for me. So thank you for sharing your career with us. It's been very informative.
Okay, so any questions from our students? So one of the things I did want to ask you guys is, do you feel this virtual work experience would be useful or not? From my understanding is that when you come to your interviews and all, one of the things which is key is for you to be able to talk about some patient experience that you have. So, we've not done this before. I'm not sure how effective it would be. But I wanted to see whether you guys would be interested in such a program.
Rayhan has a question for you.
Right.
Rayhan, if you want to take your microphone off mute and ask Mr. George.
Yeah, so when you finished university, how many years did it take for you to become like a neurosurgeon in total?
Well, including university, I would say I have trained for 20 years. So it's not the case that everybody has to do that, but I wanted to do a very specific thing, including my research and so forth. So so it's a long career. So there are many specialties which don't have such a long career. So for example, if you're going to being a GP, it's a much shorter career, and there are other careers which are shorter as well. Surgical careers generally take longer, and again, you don't necessarily need to spend that much time, but if there is a particular thing that you would like to do, then often it takes.
Okay, thank you.
Would anyone else like to ask a question to Mr. George?
Hi, I was just wondering, like, what are the things you enjoy the most about your job right now?
Well, right now it's difficult, but in general, I would say the operating is what I enjoy the most. And this is what I was trying to allude to earlier, which is some people just don't enjoy surgery. And that's a sad thing, because you spend many years training to be a surgeon. And then, though operating is actually only a small part of my job, I would estimate that only 10% of my entire time is actually spent operating. But as a surgeon, that's the key thing. That's what defines you. So that's what makes you different to the other doctors. So that 10%, if you don't enjoy that 10%, then you have to ask yourself, well, is it worth it? So I really enjoy operating. So I might be very nervous about a case outside theatre, but as soon as I step in, I'm very calm, I'm relaxed, I enjoy it. And even if it's a challenging operation, it is, you know, when you go home, you have a good feeling about it. There are times when it is very hair racing. For example, I recently had an operation where there was a lot of blood loss. So, you know, when the patient's blood pressure starts dropping, your own blood pressure also starts dropping. And then you think you might actually pass out because you're worried about the patient. But then you know that you can't afford to do that. You have to will yourself to stay there, and not just stay there, complete the operation, but you have to be very calm because people around you might be panicking. And if they see you panicking, then that gets worse. So you have to pretend to be calm, even if you're not inside very calm. And these are things which don't come quickly. This is one of the reasons why surgery takes so long, because you know you can't do very complex surgery you know, very early in your career. And yes, you might be able to do the technical bits of it quite well, but that stillness of nature and calmness comes only with having seen and experienced a lot of disasters. So that just takes years. And even when you go into medical school, you will find the first few years are stressful, and after that it becomes easier. It never gets, the work never gets lighter, so you'll still be working hard, but you will find you're a bit more in control of your day-to-day life, and you will find it gets a bit easier because you've seen most of the horrible things already, and so that means you're more in control. So surgery is very much what I would enjoy. You know, we mentioned teamwork, so getting on with your colleagues and not just your patients is also very important. So I've always thought medicine is people management first and then patient management second. If you're not good at the first, you will not be allowed to do the second. And so hence temperament is key, particularly when you work in a big team. So there's no point in being a very hotshot specialist if your team don't want to work with you. You know, you just won't be able to do anything. So those are key things.
Has anyone else got any questions?
Yes, I do. Over your time that, you know, becoming a surgeon, is there anything that you've learned, something that you could have done better, or would you say you're happy the way everything is right now?
Yes, I think I'm pretty happy in terms of the career and so forth, and things which my experiences in different countries have actually helped me understand so many things. So I never imagined that I would be working in so many different health care systems. But again, one of the interests I have now is to know how money flows and how to spend money in the most efficient way to providing good healthcare outcomes. And having worked in different healthcare systems in different countries, I've had an insight into the different systems. So these are things which I never thought I would be interested in. But apart from learning the nitty-gritty bits of surgery, I've been fortunate enough to learn a lot of other things and gained a lot of other skills as well.
Any other questions at all?
Okay.
Yeah, I have one last question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Ray.
So the salaries in like medicine, do they differ a lot between like different like type of doctors, or they?
Well, I think it's a very important question.
Yeah.
So, and the way I would look at it is, if you're working in the National Health Service, it doesn't really matter what your specialties. Every doctor is paid pretty much the same. You get a set salary if you're a consultant. Some people will work a few extra sessions and then they are paid a bit more. Some people will work in the private sector and then they're paid more. I don't like to generalize, but some surgeons, surgery and specialties which involve procedures. So there are some medical specialties which, for example, involve procedures. They tend to pay a bit more if you're doing private practice. Then there is, if you're in the US, for example, you're paid a lot more. And there are some other countries where you're paid less. The other way of looking at it is, for people who are committed, you spend so much time in hospital that actually you don't have time to spend a lot of money. So, you know, I think you can rest assured you're never going to be out of a job. You're never going to starve. Your kids will go to good schools. And most importantly, when you come home, you'll be satisfied. You know, even if it's a very hard day at work, you'll know you have helped people. And so I see that as the most important thing. If your focus is purely on making money, I would say probably medicine is not for you. I think if you work hard, money will come. But there are probably other fields where you can make more money for less effort. So I'm a great believer in that. You should do what you really love. This is very important. The money will come. And if you really love what you're doing, then, you know, even if you're paid a little bit less than your colleagues, that won't upset you.
Any other questions at all?
What's one thing that you wish you knew about being a doctor when you were a medical student, like about the doctor life?
Well, so I never imagined that you would be working so hard, to be honest. Even as the years pass by, I don't think I'm working any less now than before. So that's one. The other thing is, it's important to spend time looking after yourself, your health. So it's always going to be busy. So you need to make sure that you have enough exercise, that you see enough of the sun, for example, and also to be not upset when you can't complete all the tasks you're given. So a general thing as a junior doctor, for example, is that you'll be given 20 things to do in a day and you'll have time to do only 12. And the other 8 things, people are going to be upset with you because you haven't finished that. But you don't take that home. You realize you've done the best you can. And as a junior doctor, I think it's very important to learn to organize yourself. So you need to pick the 12 most important things. And that again takes time. And you need to, I suppose, learn to forgive yourself when you've not got things right. This is also very important. So in some specialties, it's even more acute than others. So as a surgeon, the highs are higher, but the lows are much deeper. So if you're a physician and you have a bad outcome from a patient, it is usually never one person's decision which has led to that, because it's a team effort. Or say you give the wrong drug, you don't see a problem immediately, it's a slow process. As a surgeon, it's often immediate. So yes, you feel it more when it's a success, and when it's a failure, again, you'll feel it more. So these are some of the things one needs to bear in mind. I would think it's very important as you age, particularly going through medicine, to try and ask yourself, what bits do you enjoy as you go through different departments? What bits do you enjoy? And to know yourself is very important. There's no right or wrong answer.
Any other questions for Joshi at all?
Okay, well, shall we call it a day then?
Okay, thank you, Joshi, and I've really appreciate you taking time out and organising this for us. I'm sure the students would like to pass on their thanks as well.
Okay. All right. If you have any questions, just email me. I'm very happy to meet with you if need be.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.